Alright, so next week we're going to start beginning kind of character animation stuff. So your homework for this week, just FYI, is that world that you are building for me right now. Just think of a character that would exist in that world. Okay? So if you're... What?
Sorry, I've already done that.
That's fine here. I didn't ask you to, but it's fine if you have. What I will show you today is I was going to show you a scene that I made over the weekend, over the review week. And I can package that up and give it to you in Google Classroom if you want as well to have a look at it. And the other thing I want to show you was triggers, which you have not seen, correcto?
Oh my god.
So this one was based on that Gris game that I was showing you. Is that not running in Maximize? Okay, cool. So there is not all, it's not fully animated, like it needs more animation. But it's got stuff, I am nicking an art style, FYI. I am like following Gris. So let me just bring that little...
Are those like assets taken from the game? Or
No, I made them. So I am following the art style, but I didn't make them. So let me just move this stupid sphere. Okay, cool. Alright, so I don't know if you can see... Is that working? That's not working. Oh, it's paused. Lol. No! Stop maximizing. Okay, let me just... I'm going to have to do it like this so I can see both screens. And pause. Okay, cool. So you see everything's animating, and if I pop through, it does little things like that. So these little touches are really, really good for making the game world. Now, when I go to actually create my character and move my character around the world, they'll obviously react the same way. The way I have it set is I have something called a trigger, which you all have seen. You all seen the triggers can trigger things, and I'll go over that again today. But basically, they're triggering. These are triggering an animation. This one's triggering a little particle effect. This is triggering animation as well. See, they're flying away. It's a prefab, so these are all prefab, so they all do the same thing. And they all animate away. They literally just play a little animation when I'm there, and then they come back. So if I stay still, it comes back. When I leave, it's fine. When I go back in, there's like a little trigger there. When I enter that trigger, it plays, and then when I exit, it just plays once and then goes back to idle. Okay. I don't want it to keep playing because that would mean if I stand on the flower or whatever, it would just keep animating, which is kind of not what I want. I just want to animate once. So only when I enter the trigger. Cool. I also have a little puzzle thing here that I will hopefully be able to play later. But essentially, it's like a way to get from here to here. You need to get up here, and then when you do, the door opens. Again, all of this completely controlled triggers and animation. There is very little code, very tiny code that I'll show you now. But you should know this code already because you've worked with triggers, correct? Yeah. Okay. So it's just to show you what you can do with this, and it's not a huge lot. I'm not going to tell you how to solve the puzzle because basically, if you come here, it pulls this thing down. And if you jump off it, like here, it balances out, so you're not able to reach the thingamajig. So there's a puzzle of like how do you keep it down, basically. Okay. So yeah, this is built in like a day, pretty much. But it is a lot more. Well, it is complex, but a lot of the stuff, if you pay attention to it, a lot of the stuff is the same stuff over and over, right? So like if I maximize that, these are literally just tinted versions of these that are scaled up bigger. A lot of the pillars, like these pillars, they're exactly this one, upside down, just reuse. These big pillars I reuse here again. I just tinted the colors a little bit. And this kind of like gate door is made of this pillar here, that's this pillar, and a giant block in the back. There's a giant block here. So they're just reusing the same assets that I have over and over and over. So it makes it way more complicated even though I'm using like, I think I can show you the sprite sheet. I have 2 sprite sheets. That is one of them. That's literally all the building sprite sheets, and I have another one for moving things. Hold on a sec. So these are the plant sprite sheets. So this and this, and the reason why I have them is the grayscale because I can tint them, and when I tint them, they'll just tint whatever color they're being. So there's a drawback to this approach, which is I can't do mixed colors. So if I like tint this circle, it can only tint whatever color I tinted. So if I tinted blue, it's blue. It can't be like blue and red at the same time. So that's the only drawback. There are ways around it, but they're generally quite complicated. So if you need multiple colors, you generally just paint it directly in. I just did it white so I can tint it and have it easier for me to use. So just with those two sprite sheets, I have all of this. In the background, I don't know if you will run. Another thing I have is, why isn't it working? Is it working? Oh, you can see you probably can't see it, though, it's terrible. On the bottom right is probably the best place. I don't know if you can see the texture slowly scrolling. Yeah, it's really tiny. Really tiny little scroll. So it's a really nice way to make it look like clouds are going past. So instead of having loads of clouds and everything like that, I just have a texture and it's scrolling through the texture, just telling this texture to offset. I also have background animations, these kind of things. I made them really light so they fit to the background, but they literally just animate and just play, just keep looping and idling. Sorry, looping, not idling. They just keep looping. Ideally, I'd like them to play at different random times, but for now, I just wanted to show you. They're just playing. And then there's a big sun thing. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, it's kind of moving around. So they're all really simple things. They literally all have 1 or 2 animations most, and it's just replicating them a lot to make the place feel a lot more lived in or a lot more vibrant than it actually is. And the little things like the reacting butterflies and the reacting plants, they're so tiny, but they make such a big difference. That's such a huge difference when people actually play. So let me just. The last thing I wanted to show you is this thing called Effectors. So if I look at one of these, I don't know if you can see that. Let me just look at one of these. Can you see? There we go. So there's an edge collider. So just a pure thin, super thin edge collider. So stuff that falls onto it will collide. But there's this thing called an Effector. Have you seen Effectors? No? Okay. They only work for 2D stuff. Platform Effector, 2D. And what that allows is, if I have a character, for later, it's going to be very good. See that kind of arc that it has? If anything comes in from the top of the arc, it'll collide. Anything from the bottom of the arc won't collide. So it allows you to have a platform that you can, those platforms you can jump up and then you land on them, but you don't you don't just hit the wall when you jump up over it. So that's an Effector. They're really good for 2D kind of stuff. So I have those around the level. I think everything is an Effector except for colliders here. And then I just have 2 giant colliders here and here to block the player in so they don't fall off the edge. The stairs are also. I go into the stairs here. That's also an Effector. You see the way it's that way. So if it comes from this angle, it's grand. They can walk on the collider, and if you're from here and you want to jump up to the next stair, you can because the effect is at that angle. Right? So it's from below, it'll jump up and go on top of it. To use the Effector, you have to turn on whatever collider you use. This tick needs to be on, used by collider. By Effector. And this offset, the rotational offset, that's how I rotated it to go that way, because by default it's straight. So I rotated it that way. And then there is the surface arc. So 180 is by default, so it'll take 180. You can make it 360 if you want. I don't know why you would, but you could make it all the way 360. So no matter which angle you approach, you can go through. I don't know, depending on people. But just that's how you control it. So let's have a look at actually, any questions before I continue? Yes.
What are the sprite scale size?
So, good question, actually, and I should have said this. I was very, very careful. None of these sprites have been resized at all. So I made them in Photoshop. I made them in a 1024 by 1024. The Photoshop file basically looks like that, and I just saved it as a PNG. And the reason why I have them all next to each other is so I can scale based on each other. They are all unit sizes. Each unit it's 1024 for the whole thing. I think each unit was 64. I can't remember. But I just made sure everything was unit size so they could fit together correctly. And then I just saved the whole thing as a PNG. So that's why this entire image is a PNG. It's a sprite. It's set to multiple, so it cuts out all the multiple little pieces, and I can drag them each and use them each individually. Yeah? Okay. So instead of having 1 million sprites, I have a sprite sheet that I just put stuff on, and then I just have one. Like I have 3 sprites that I'm dealing with. I only have I have this. I have the plant one. That's a sprite, and then I just have literally just one just for the sun, just one giant one for the sun because I only thought of it later on, and I slapped in the sun. So I only have those 3 to deal with. So it's not like I'm looking through a folder of hundreds of sprites. It makes it a lot easier when you shove them together to use sprite sheets. There's a couple of fancy things I'm doing. One of the things is I am using post-processing, which you have all seen. Yeah? Okay, cool. So I am using post-processing, which does make it look a lot better. If I turn off post-processing, it's okay. This post-processing. So that's it all off. But it just has like a nice little extra effect. There's a teeny tiny bloom, which you probably can't see in the crappy projector, but it just makes the white areas shine out a little more. Be aware, bloom only affects stuff that is 3D lighting. It doesn't affect 2D lighting. Okay, so I have some quads in there that are 3D, and that's a bit more advanced. But I just have a few quads in there that are taking light and are being affected by light. And I have color grading. Color grading just shifts. I have it shifting the temperature. So remember we're talking about like colder temperatures are blue, warmer temperatures are like yellow and warm. So if I keep shifting to blue, you see it keeps going to blue, and I keep going to warm, and now it feels a lot more deserty. I'm going way too far, but that's kind of the concept. I have it somewhere in the middle, and then the tint is between green to pink, and that's kind of like an added tint over it. And you can put a color filter over everything as well. I think this is very, like, one thing that you might notice is that when I turn it on and off, you can tell the difference, but they're not massive. And that's something you should try and do when you're messing with these post-processing filters. If it's too big, it looks garish, doesn't look good. So they're kind of only there to get like final little tiny tweaks. Like this contrast, I don't know if you can probably barely tell. Can you tell at all? I can tell in this, but I don't know if you can tell. I can't tell.
Very slightly.
Super slightly. But that's kind of what you want. You want it to only be really small. I have a vignette, so that darkens the edges. So you can see that. That one you can see, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Right. That darkens the edges. And that's all I have on that. So let's have a look at one of these. So let me look at this plant. So you might also notice they're all blue to the left, which means I prefabbed them. Which have you done prefabs yet?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I've prefabbed every single one of them. So if I change any of these, I can just change one of the prefabs. It'll propagate to all of them, which saved my life a lot of times because I fucked up a few things. Went back, changed one, propagated to all of them. So here's a prefab. Let me look at that one. So what this has, it has a box collider. What it comprises of is, this is a completely empty game object. Completely empty. Except for the rigid body, which it needs to be a trigger. The box collider, which is the size of this, and it's tapped to be a trigger, is trigger. The animator that controls the animations, and I have a really simple trigger script. These all go in the empty. And the reason why these go in the empty is because the children move. So these are the children, they're like sprites. They move and they animate. You do not want your physics to animate. You generally want to leave it separate. So whenever you have a player later on, when we create a player, it will be like an empty game object that a collider is on. All the controls are on there. You move that empty game object. And as a child, it has something that animates and moves and follows what the parent is doing. Does that kind of make sense? All right. You always, always, always want to separate code from visuals. There are certain exceptions, but for the vast majority of it, this makes your life a lot easier. Because if you imagine if I have an animation which does like that, now my entire collider has moved over there, and it changes your physics, it changes how it interacts with stuff. It's a lot harder to deal with. Whereas if I just I animate like that, but my collider is still the same, it's a lot easier to deal with, and you know where your hitbox is. It's a lot more consistent. Okay, cool. There's an exception, which is like fighting games, for example. It's an exception where the hitboxes changes all the time because they're pixel perfect. Well, close to pixel perfect, but that's an exception. So anyway, so it's got this trigger, and all the trigger says. It talks to the animator, which you all have seen, right? And remember last week I made an animator with 2 animations, right? So all this does is at the start it grabs the animator and puts it into the public animator. I'm telling it to look for a public animator called anim, and at the start it just grabs it from itself. So it sets that animator to be anim. So by default there's nothing in there, but when I press play, it will get component of type animator and put it here. It will get component of type, oh my god. Sorry. And there we go. So it found its own animator component and put it into there. Okay, and then what it does is it then on trigger enter 2D, and it has to be 2D because it's a 2D collider. Collider 2D collider, so it's looking for a collider 2D, and we're going to call it collider. And if the game object.tag is player, so only if the entering thing is a player, it will set a trigger called active. And a trigger fires once only. So it's not a bool, because if it's a bool, I have to turn it off on exit. You can do that. You can do like set bool, that this would be set bool instead of set trigger. But I wanted to like do a once-off shot, which is a trigger. And if I go to the animator, it has a active trigger. Let me turn that on. Oh my god, sorry. So which push is this? This is that one. So I pull the animator out. So essentially, when a player enters this trigger, it goes boop, active, plays the active, and goes back. Okay, so boop, active, plays, come back. The transitions between the two of them. Have you seen how to set all this up yet?
Yeah.
Yes? You sure? Yeah, I did, but just like, is that okay? Do you want me to do it again?
I think it can sense it, yeah, if everyone else is.
I can do it again if you want. Okay. Anyway, so the active is here. It has this parameter called an active. It's a trigger parameter, and the transition between this and this is conditional, and it says conditional active. So only when active is triggered does it go to the active animation. So let me trigger that again. Awesome. And for going back, it just has an exit time, which just means whenever this is finished playing, just go right back there. There's no condition except for that. Just when this animation is finished, go right back to idle. Okay? Cool. So I'm going to set that up again. I'm going to set a brand new animation, brand new prefab, just to test, just for you to see. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, cool.
We only have to do that once pass first.
Absolutely. So once that's done, these are all just copies of the same thing. And literally they all are copying, they're all sitting there looking for a player game object collider. When the player comes out, it just plays animation. That's all it does. Alright. So let me grab a... Wait, where's my particle effect? Are there little leaves falling down? Are there? No, they're feckin' not. Alright, there should be little leaves falling down somewhere. Do I have my sorting group wrong? Oh, there they are. Oh. Yeah. Don't know why it took so long. Cool. So let's make a new one. I'm just gonna make like...
Make the serious move.
No, I'm just gonna do that. Do a pillar. And remember, these two are the things that I want to animate. So I need to create an empty and put them into the empty. Right? So I don't animate the actual animator. So I'm going to create an empty. Child those two to it. Set them to 0, 0, 0. So they're exactly where that game object is.
Okay.
And I will move that here. Okay, so my animation is just going to be this thing going like, wait. I don't know. What's a cool animation?
It rotates.
Nah, yeah, I can do a stupid rotate. It's fine. So it'll just basically do that. It's really dumb. I won't actually use it. I was just thinking if I could add something else in, but I'll just make a really dumb animation. Do be careful for the sorting layers. So I have everything here. into foreground, midground, in front of player. So I have these sorting layers: background, foreground, midground, in front of player, and I just put them into an empty game object just so it's easier for me to see everything in that sorting layer. But each one of them, sorting layer in front of foreground. So they have like sorting layers. So I'll go to these two. I'll set their sorting layer to be in front of foreground, and I can tint both the colors at the same time if I want to. And I will put the pillar behind the bell. So let's make the bell like, okay, cool. That's not very useful. What if I make it, okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna make this one so that when the player passes through the trigger, the bell will just rotate a little bit. You just kind of go like thing like that, okay? So what I need, first of all, I have that set up. Firstly, I need the collider for where it's going to pay attention to. So I'll make a collider 2D. Cool. You can hit edit like this, and you can just like animate it like this. So essentially, if a player game object comes within this area around here, I'll make the bell rotate. And this collider is on the empty game object. It's not on any of this bell or the pillar. I don't want it to be. It's on the empty game object, so it always will.
That would mean if you move the collider itself, it won't move the game objects.
Yeah, these two are pure sprites. All they do is animate.
So
they don't have any effect on the physics.
Nice.
Okay? I need to make sure it's a trigger. Cool. And then I need to animate it. So I need to go window, animation, and it will tell me, oh no, I need to give it a name, not game object. Bell, pillar. Will this be in the foreground or the background? Do foreground for now. And straight away, I can prefab that immediately. Just so if I make a mistake, I have the prefab, alright? And that's just dragging it into somewhere into the folder. So I need the animation now. Window, animation. Create an animation, and I'll call that bell pillar. I'll do an idle first. Cool. So in the idle, I'm just gonna leave it empty. So there's nothing on idle. It just won't do anything at all. I could make it sway a little bit, but if I don't want to, I can just leave it completely empty. And then I can make a new one. Bell pillar active. Record. You need to hit record, and I will rotate that little bell. And when I imported the sprites, I put the pivot point of the sprite up here, so it does rotate up there where I need it to. Wait, let's have that there. Control C, Control V does work, so it should do that. And then I want it to slow down a bit, so I want it to like knock and then slow down, so it'll rotate less. And let's play that and see how that looks like. Oh, screwed up. These the same as this? Yeah, these two are the same. So delete, we'll delete them. And right, so you see the way like it rotates a lot and then it rotates less. So I rotated it less. So it kind of looks like it slows down. And it should go back to idle then. So I'm done. That animation is done, finished. And because it's Unity, it automatically created an animator and saved it somewhere here. So it usually will automatically call it bell pillar foreground animator. So it should be, there it is. Bell pillar foreground animator. And it stored the two animations in there. Awesome. So I have my idle and my active. Idle doesn't do anything. Active has that rotation bell thing. Okay. I know I'm looking for a active. Oh, sugar. I am in layers. That is my fault. I need to go to parameters. And I know I'm looking for a trigger. Again, you can do bool, you can do float. For example, that door that I have, that's a bool because it only needs like what? Oh, sorry, it's not a bool, it's a trigger. But there are things where you may want it to stay open or or stay in that state until you turn it off. And for that one, you would use a bool, right? But I'm just going to use a trigger, which only fires once, and I will call it active because my script is setting trigger active. Coolio? So that by itself is not enough because this trigger doesn't do anything. So first of all, I need to say from idle you can go to active, and from active you can go to idle. From active to idle, it's fine. I don't need a condition. As soon as you finish active, just go back to idle. But for idle going to active, I'm going to turn off the exit time, so you don't need to finish the idle animation before you go to active. It'll happen immediately. And then I'll set the condition to be active. When you press plus, it will allow you to drop down. So if I have multiple parameters, I can drop down and choose which parameter I want. I only have one. I only have active. That okay? So let me just test it actually. Always test your stuff just to make sure it's working. I need to move away so I can see my scene. Cool, so it's there. Cool, and you see it animating because I have to select it. And if I hit the trigger, cool. And then it goes back to idle. Cool, so it works. It's grand. I just need to hook up the code for it now, which is as simple as dragging that script on. So I have the, is it called simple trigger script? Yeah. Simple trigger, drag that on, and that should be it. So what's my test sphere? Just grab my test sphere. Bring it over. There you go. Do you see animate? And do it again. Boop. So as long as my character goes in there, it will animate. And that's because my test sphere is tagged as a player. If it was not tagged as a player, it would ignore it. And that's important because you may have, like, if you break a rock off the ceiling and it falls down and bounces around, you may want it to affect all the animations, or you may not. So depending on whether you want it to or not, the tags control that. That one is tag player, so it will react to things that are tag player. I can add more tags, so I can be like, if the collider game object tag is player, or wait, where's more? Or collider game object tag is
Another player.
Another player, and whatever other object I have is tagged another player, it will also react to either of those. Okay, and then that's how I add that in there. Coolio? Any questions?
Where did you tag the object?
So on the object itself, up here, top left, is the tag. Okay, so tags are important because tags are kind of like you're labeling something. And if you have physics collisions, you can do stuff like what I did, which is whatever the collider that interacted with you, dot game object, so the game object that owns that collider, dot tag. So the tag of that game object that had that collider that you interacted with. The layers to the right, these are different from sorting layers. And this is a little confusing. Those layers are physics layers. So you can have stuff like where foreground physics does never interact with player physics, for example. So stuff can happen in the foreground. You can have like rocks falling down and like bouncing off stuff, but they'll never hit the player. Like you can have them set so they're on different collision matrices. Okay, that's kind of advanced stuff. I probably shouldn't have. What we do deal with is we do deal with the tags because we need that collider to know where the tag is in order to animate, and we deal with the sorting layers. And sorting layers are purely visual. It's just like which group are you in? Is that group in front of other groups or behind other groups? And in that group, what's your order and layer? So my test sphere is like 10,000, just to make sure it's always in front of everything I put it in front of. Because it's just my test sphere. I'm just using the test stuff. Okay? LG, any other questions?
Will the animator always wait for the animation to finish before being able to retrigger?
So that's the exit time thing. If exit time is on, it must finish whatever animation it is before it allows. If you turn exit time off, it will, like, at whatever point it receives the input, it will play the next animation. There's one caveat with that is, if you have exit time off, you must have a condition. So if you have exit time off, you must have it like only play the next animation if a trigger is called or a bool is called. You can't leave it empty. If exit time is on, you can leave it empty. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you have the you know the way you had it check for the tags? Is there a way to have it check for all tags except one?
Yeah. So I would inverse it. So I'd be like, if collider.getModule.tag is not equals to something, then do that. And then you can do an else if, do everything else. Or you probably don't need an else if, just go like straight to. Cool. I might actually use that. I'll obviously tint the colors differently. Oh, sorry. Stopping. Okay, cool. So again, if I just apply to all, if I had made loads of copies of this, you all should know this, but just in case, and I'm like, oh no, the colors are terrible, that's fine, just change one of them. And then you can go to the prefab, parent, overrides, apply to all, and they apply to everything. Okay, so that's why prefabs are useful. So definitely use prefabs. It saved me a lot while making this. What? Say again, sorry? You can do something called a prefab variant. So if I drag, this is a prefab already, right? If I drag it back in again, it'll ask me, do I want to make a brand new prefab or prefab variant? And I can make a variant. So like the variant will be like kind of following the parent, but won't propagate changes until you say you must follow the parent now. You can also like, these are all prefabs, and I can still individually go to this one and be like, I kind of want this one to be that color. That's fine. I just won't like override everything else. I just won't apply to all. That's all. And if I screw up, and this again, this is why prefabs are great. If I screw up, I'm going, oh crap, I didn't want to do that. Revert all and back to normal, back to what my prefab standard is. Okay, so they're super useful. Okay, so for today, all you need to do is I'm gonna give you this scene. I'm gonna package it up and post in Google Classroom now. I'm just gonna like put little folders so they all go to the little folders. You can have a look at that scene. Open it in Unity and have a look around it. You'll be building your scene, and you will be thinking of a character to design for me for next week. And for next week, I will show you how we're going to set up the character so it animates, so it moves, so it interacts with triggers and stuff like that. Okay? That cool? All right, cool.
But
Yes.
you know how I said between 10 animations are needed? When you make a character and you give it like an idle animation and a walking animation, does that
10 animations that I'm talking about, the 10 animations are purely for the level.
Okay.
Nothing to do with character.
Okay.
Okay? So like, I have this little thing animates when you walk through it, that's an interactable animation. You know the way 10 and 5 of them have to be interactable? That's an interactable animation. The little butterflies flying around, that's an animation. The way they run away when you walk through them, that's another animation. That's an interactable one. Okay? So you don't actually have to do that many. It's 10 animations and just 5 of them have to be interactive.
Yeah.
Okay. Even a little thing rotating around, that's an animation. That's fine. Cool, so let me package this up now and send it over.